used to think that I was sabotaging or not receiving my manifestations because I wasn't positive enough or spiritual enough. Then I realized my nervous system just didn't feel safe enough to receive what I was asking for yet. In this video, I want to get into some of the reasons why our nervous system isn't primed for the safety of receiving and how to begin the journey back to safety and presence. If you're new here, my name is Brielle. Hello and welcome. I'm a licensed therapist, but I created this channel to help you regulate your nervous system, develop self-compassion, and overall just live a more peaceful life. So if that sounds like your thing, I would love it if you would subscribe and stick around. But let's get into it. First of all, there really is so much manifestation content and material out there, but it's still such a source of frustration for so many people, which automatically tells me that we don't have a knowledge or information problem. We have a nervous system problem. Human brains have evolved to scan and analyze for danger and then protect us. They're not naturally wired to receive and to trust. Our brains are wired for survival, which is why usually peace is not their default state. This is what I mean when I talk on my channel about our brains and our minds always scanning for problems, because our minds want to feel useful. They want to feel in control. And when they create a problem out of something, there's something for the mind to control. Our minds really don't like to let go, so they overcomplicate our life. So we can begin to see where the disconnect is for a lot of people in manifesting. Manifesting requires letting go, it requires surrender, it requires trust. And our brains and our nervous systems have a really difficult time doing that. Being in a state of presence, surrender, and trust doesn't necessarily feel safe when you're used to being dysregulated or overanalyzing things. So this is why we try to collect more manifestation information. We think if we have more knowledge surrounding it and we understand it more intellectually, that we'll feel safe enough to let go. But that safety never comes from logic alone, especially if we went through trauma, whether that's capital T trauma or little t trauma in our childhood. If we grew up associating the positive things that we want in our lives with fear, rejection, and stress, then our subconscious is going to block the flow of those things in our life. Not because our subconscious wants to sabotage us or because it wants to hurt us, but because it wants to protect us. Our subconscious really doesn't want us to have to go through the things that were difficult that we maybe witnessed growing up. So the first step is understanding this about your mind and about your nervous system so that we're not working against these things. Our minds and our nervous systems are the way they are because they want us to survive. They want us to be okay, and sometimes it's misguided, but it's not ill-intentioned. Another thing I want to talk about is that in this 3D world we live in, things happen by cause and effect. And contrast, delay, and pivots are all part of the process because they teach us about patience, about trust, and about getting back into alignment when things aren't going our way. Contrast is a big part of how we learn and how we grow in this human experience. I'm sure you've heard the saying that if we hadn't experienced sadness, we wouldn't know what true joy felt like either. In order to be whole, we need to be able to experience the full range of emotions. So when you're experiencing contrast in pursuit of any manifestation, this is a part of the process that is necessary in order to learn on the journey and appreciate where you're going. If everything that we wanted to accomplish was accomplished in an instant without any growth, we'd be robbed of the journey and we wouldn't even know how to appreciate it. We'd be on to the next thing so fast. Another way that we unintentionally hold ourselves back from our manifestations is that as humans, we seek what's familiar over seeking what's best for us or over seeking growth. Expansion and growth are not comfortable things. They can be very uncomfortable. So sometimes in the moment, it can feel like the obvious choice is a choice that's comfortable, the choice that's familiar. It's kind of like that saying, the devil we know. People would rather choose something they know is bad for them because it's comfortable and maybe predictable than choosing growth and expansion because it will always be uncomfortable to grow. You're getting out of your comfort zone. So along with this, we will keep replaying patterns over and over again in our life until we're ready to choose differently. If you're trying to attract better relationships, the only way that you show you're really ready to receive that is if you're not accepting less in the meantime. The other part of this that I feel like is so important to mention is that growth has to happen in stages. Manifesting is a form of growth. You're expanding and you're opening yourself up and you're becoming the person, the version of you that's in alignment with what you want, that's ready and open to receive what you want. But a lot of the time, if our biggest manifestation were to show up tomorrow, we wouldn't be ready for it. We would be scared. We wouldn't know how to receive it. And that's actually okay. Like I said before, the journey is a big part of it, and who you become along the journey is a big part of it. And growth and expansion happens in stages. So when you have something that you want to align with that's a big goal, but it feels scary for your nervous system doesn't even know how to begin accepting that as part of your reality, it's a good idea to kind of break it up into pieces and look at what's the next step up from where I am now that feels a little more believable to my nervous system right now, that I can prime my nervous system to handle without it completely freaking out. So taking manifestation in small, realistic steps is actually the thing that's going to help your nervous system adapt and really eventually level up to where you want it to be at. Okay, the next point I want to talk about is that manifestation requires presence. It requires being in this moment. Those small micro moments in each day where we choose to take a deep breath. We choose how we're going to respond to uncertainty. These micro moments are what make up our energetic baseline. So manifestation isn't acquiring new knowledge. It's not doing this ritual or doing that ritual or doing a method where you write things down. I'm not saying those don't work for some people, but in my experience, doing the methods, if you haven't actually primed your nervous system to believe you're worthy of the things you want, doesn't actually do anything. Nervous system safety is the quickest portal to manifesting what you want, because when you're in the energy of safety and that's your energetic baseline, that no matter what happens, you can have a reaction, you can have an emotion, you can experience difficult things, but you trust yourself and you've primed yourself that you know how to get back to your baseline, and you always know that you're safe with you because you have your own back. That is the most important thing. So it's the repetition of the small, regulating, safety building choices that we make every day until we embody nervous system safety. That's what gets you closer to your manifestations. I also have more videos on my channel specifically about ways to regulate your nervous system and ways to rewrite old stress stories that I'll link in the description below if you want to have kind of an in-depth map about regulating your nervous system towards safety. So now I want to talk about those old stories that are stored in our nervous system that maybe became embedded there because of our childhood experiences or because of a relationship or because of our conditioning. There are so many different reasons why we attach to a story about ourselves or our lives subconsciously, but what do we do when they're there, right? When we know there's a story that continually pops up of, I'm not worthy enough, I don't deserve this, I'm not this enough, I'm not that enough. We all know the stories, right? The self-deprecating stories, the stories that make us feel dysregulated, the stories that don't feel good to our nervous systems. What do we do with them? The goal is not to erase these stories. It's to change our relationship to them. We do this by aligning our language and our actions with the new story that we're creating. The goal is to no longer be so strongly identified with the old stories. We can't delete our life experiences, and we're not meant to. Likely, those life experiences taught you something very important to get you to where you are now. Now, I will say as a disclaimer, if we're talking about a very traumatic event, something very traumatic that caused the story that you're perpetuating in your life, I don't recommend trying to rewrite that story alone. I absolutely recommend looking into a type of therapy like EMDR or brainspotting. If you haven't heard of those types of therapies, you can leave a comment and I can answer any questions you have. You can do a quick Google search of those treatments, but those are types of therapies that are supposed to desensitize, in a way, your attachment and your identification with very traumatic memories, and they work really well. I've practiced both of those types of therapies, done training in both of them. So if we're talking about traumatic events, PTSD, that type of thing, I don't think you should follow the same protocol as when it's a different type of negative story that didn't stem from something very traumatic. When we're talking about these stories that come from our conditioning, our childhood relationships. With these old stories, we can create a wider narrative that includes greater possibilities. We can create this new narrative of those moments were real to me and maybe led me to this story I don't quite know how to work through right now, but I'm opening space for blank. So whatever it is that you're looking for in your life, you have to be willing and open to create space for it and create a new narrative around it. So you don't have to delete these old stories or these old thoughts. That's not possible. It's just about not identifying or attaching to them as much and about adding on to them with a greater sense of possibility. So I'll just use the example of me starting this channel. At first, when I was posting my first few videos, I was a little nervous. I hadn't really posted anything of myself where I was sharing my in-depth thoughts online. So I definitely was a little nervous in that process. But then I had one video that got more views and comments and engagement than I was expecting. And that was really the first true challenge for my nervous system, because what I had been wanting was to grow this community. What I still want is to grow this community. That's my goal with this channel, is to create a space and a community here where we can all help each other thrive. But when I saw the first glimpses of that happening, it definitely challenged my nervous system a little bit. And there were some old stories of worthiness coming up. There are some stories of people are going to see the real you and they're not going to want to engage anymore. They're going to see that you're really not that great. And these old stories that had come from past conditioning started coming back up, and they were super uncomfortable, and my nervous system felt incredibly challenged. I can't delete the fact that I have had experiences in my life that have made me feel that way, that have made me feel unworthy. I can't delete the thoughts that come up sometimes when those old stories get triggered, but I can create a new possibility and create a new narrative around that story. I can detach from that story and say, okay, that's coming up from the piece of me that used to believe that was true. That's a story that I used to believe was true. I don't have to believe that anymore. I can honor that there was a part of me that was hurt by that, and that's why it shows up, but I'm leaving space for possibility. I'm leaving space for growth and expansion. I'm leaving space to make an impact and create a community, because that's what I really want. And when we do this, when we open the narrative and we don't stay stuck in how narrow those old stories try to make us feel, and those old stories really try to narrow our field of vision so that we hone in on the negative and the difficult and the hard. And if we refuse to narrow, if we break open and allow ourselves to expand and allow possibility in, our nervous system will adapt over time. Our nervous system will adapt to the new stories and become more flexible overall. The deeper these subconscious stories go, the more patience you need to have with yourself as you rewrite them. The old story will keep popping up because it's habitual, not because you're failing at anything. It's not a failure to be impacted by life. You haven't failed by being hurt. You haven't failed by being affected. But from this point forward, it is your responsibility to choose something different. You're allowed to be impacted by life, and you're also allowed to expand beyond that hurt and want more for yourself. With time, your whole being starts to match this new identity. Eventually, you'll realize that you've anchored in this new story into your nervous system, and your nervous system believes it. And kind of like I mentioned with that old story that popped up for me, when you can look at these old stories with curiosity instead of judgment, and you know how to regulate your nervous system in the middle of that discomfort, that's true integration of the old and the new. And like I said before, there's no failure on this process. So much of life is the journey. So if we're looking at perceived setbacks or pivots, or we perceive things in our life as failures because we're not progressing on a linear journey, we're failing to see the beauty in the journey and the beauty in the growth. All of this takes time. And that's a beautiful thing. Like I said before, we appreciate where we're going when we appreciate the journey of getting there. And integration is not the absence of contrast in your life, but the capacity to regulate in the presence of contrast. Nervous system safety and regulation literally refers to the body's ability to be able to return to a regulated and balanced state after stress. I want to mention something else now, and that's that I do tend to take issue with people or things that promise you quick change when it comes to your nervous system, that promise a nervous system reset. If you buy their thousands of dollars course or whatever. I obviously don't know everything. Nobody does. I'm not saying it's not possible to have profound healing in certain instances, but most of the time there is a process of unlearning the old and relearning the new when it comes to nervous system work that tends to get glossed over a lot in the narrative going on right now about nervous system work. Like I said earlier, we live in a cause and effect world. It's okay if it takes time to build new habits and new patterns. In fact, it will take time to build new habits and build new patterns in your life. So, like I mentioned before, you're not a failure if this isn't instantaneous, if the story continually comes back up and you have to keep regulating and keep reaffirming your safety when these old stories pop up. Nervous system regulation is not a vague Instagram aesthetic. It's a journey and commitment to building a healthy and safe relationship with yourself and knowing that you have your own back no matter what. So the next point I want to bring up is that when there's a spiritual narrative surrounding raising your vibration in order to be an energetic match for your manifestations, I want to offer a shift in perspective that maybe feels a little more attainable to work through. A very practical way to raise your vibration is to regulate your nervous system so that your amygdala, which is the threat detection center of the brain, quiets. And so the prefrontal cortex, which is the center of our brain that controls our empathy and our creativity and our openness, comes back online. Regulation and the mind-body connection literally alters your state of consciousness. You go from survival awareness, where the mentality is what could go wrong, into creative awareness, which is the mentality of what's possible here. And like I said, if you want specific techniques about regulating your nervous system, I have a video that I'll link in the description, and I can make another video with even more information if people are interested in that. But to leave you with a short practice you can do now is when anything comes up that dysregulates you or that feels threatening to your nervous system or you don't know how to handle, if you put one heart on your chest and one heart on your belly and breathe in and tell yourself, I'm safe in this moment. All of my needs are met. I'm safe with me. I have my own back. The repetition and the practice of doing that over and over and over again is one of my favorite ways to train your nervous system towards regulation and towards peace and away from chaos. It's connecting to your body, to your breath, and using affirmation and presence to regulate. So to kind of wrap all of this up, manifestation at its core is about your state of being determining what you attract. A regulated nervous system allows you to hold belief, hope, and possibility without contracting back into fear and scarcity or control. Regulation aligns you and allows you to be receptive to new connections and opportunities and creative solutions. At the core of all of this, like I mentioned before, is having presence and being present. Being present with what is without judgment. So you can rewrite your narrative and really know that you're always safe with you. There's a few things I wrote down. I want to read a few of the sentiments that I wrote down and I've really been ruminating on. The first one is manifestation isn't about forcing energy. It's about expanding your capacity to hold it. And the next one is safety and love are the baseline frequency of the universe. Regulation is how the body remembers that. Conscious manifestation is what happens when you're committed to returning to that remembered state. So I wanted to leave you with those. If you have any questions, any requests for more information or another video, I'm always open to that and I love connecting with you guys. So just let me know how I can be of service. I want to thank you so much for spending your time here with me today. I hope you have a beautiful day.